Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review The Rental, which is currently on Netflix. It's one of those kind of 2020 films that eventually just kind of be pushed off into Netflix to kind of see if anybody's interested, to kind of help the movie out. Because a lot of times you would go on and see a movie that like wasn't anything, and then all of a sudden it goes on Netflix and it's like this huge thing. It's like, oh, I guess we can make a sequel out of this now. Great. So for the rental, this concept is kind of like the tale as old as time. We have two couples who decide to rent out a place for the weekend, and so they decide to go to this place to meet a guy named Taylor, who is an unsavory gentleman. And when they go on and further go into this place, they start to see some unsavory things that kind of make this place much more shady than they originally thought it was going to be. And so we have shady things going on in this place, and then we go on and find that there are shady people, shady, not shady people within this place. It seems like we have a lot of this movie is just very flat. It kind of has like one event to kind of carry it for a while, and then one event to carry it for a while. And there's a lot of just these. I think that this movie was just bullet pointed, where they go on and they say okay, we're gonna go and we're gonna have these certain specific events, and within those certain specific events we're just going to take XYZ time. And so maybe there isn't even a real script for any of these things. It probably just feels like, hey, we're going to come to these events and then we're going to have a script, but every other time kind of wing it, just kind of go on, and we're not going to really heavily script you guys in this film. So this movie it just doesn't do well enough with its time limit. There's a lot of movies where you can go on and watch an hour and 30 some odd minute film and just be like, wow, I felt like this was 3 hours. The whole experience of this was to have really just captivated me, and I couldn't believe that this was just an hour and 30-minute film. I was blown away with how much detail and how much stuff was in here. But now with this film, it's now one of those films where I was kind of clicking to see how long everything was, because that's usually kind of my attention span, where it's just I come on, let's go. This wasn't one of those movies. I was just watching it and I was like, oh, okay, I can easily watch it. Um, so yeah, I can't even go on and say that this movie is to really just be deserving of even a okay grading. I have to go on and just say that this movie is bad, but it's not oh my god, this is to me, I'm just well, hey, it's they tried, but they didn't get enough of anywhere through this movie. There is some possible interesting things in it, but again, they don't go enough of anywhere um, to please me, to just please me as a person who watches a film. So yeah, so it's kind of it's a bad film, but it's a light bad. They're I liked certain things that they went about within this movie, but again, it just there's a lot of just dead time or dead space within this film. Um, so whatever that means. So let's go on. Let's double five that bad boy up. Let's just go into spoilers about this film. Coinkadinkly, even with an hour and 20-minute film, there probably isn't really much for me to go in depth about within this film either. So, in the very beginning of the film, it seems that we have both Charlie and Mina who are coworkers. And so it seems like they've probably been coworkers for a really long time. And like immediately when we kind of set up Charlie and Mina's kind of looking over this computer screen, I'm immediately already knowing where this story is going to head. It's like you kind of easily set this up here. So all of a sudden we have Charlie who's with Mina looking on the place that they're going to rent for the weekend, and Mina's like, yeah, definitely this looks like a great place to go on and go for the weekend. And so all of a sudden Josh comes in and he's like, hey, like I was just nearby, I was kind of dropping somebody off, like, hey, like what are you guys doing, what's going on? So we have everybody all fully aware they're gonna go to this place for the weekend, and so immediately there is technically some uncomfortable kind of things with having both Charlie and Josh kind of being uh, renters of this house for this weekend because they're both brothers, and there's this weird awkwardness. So we go on and have these guys make it to this place, and so we have a kind of Taylor who just kind of shows up, who of course is the supposed owner, even though it's said like he says that like his brother is to also kind of uh be another guy who is to have gone on and went through this place and so on and so forth. So like it's a little confusing, but it seems that Taylor is to be the guy that's kind of walking everybody through. And so we go on here, and Taylor is to like say to Charlie, it's like, well, hey, I thought you guys were going to be coming a little bit earlier. And Charlie was like, well, hey, I'm sorry, we got a little like far behind with packing and everything like that. So like we're here now, I'm sorry. And so Taylor's like, no, it's all fine and good and everything. So Taylor, of course, is kind of show them around, and they're like, "Oh, okay." We have at one point where Michelle is kind of mentioning about this, like telescope, and Taylor is just like, "Well, like I'm sorry, like, are you guys like Are you guys peeping toms or something, or like, why do you guys need to go and have a telescope?" And like Michelle's like, "Well, it just looks like a beautiful like scenery piece and what." And Taylor's like, "Oh, okay, I get it." So Taylor is to go on and say that he's going to go and later on drop this telescope so they can go and see whatever they want to see. So while Taylor is kind of leaving, we all of a sudden have Mina who has asked Taylor, it's like, well, hey, like, it seems like I was to actually try to go on and rent this place, but it seems that my offer was instantly rejected. But Charlie went on and he tried and he was immediately accepted. Why is that? And Taylor's like, well, I don't know. Like, did you make an offer? And like Mina's like, well, yeah. And so Taylor's like, well, I'm sorry. Like, I don't know what happened, but I guess like just like wires were crossed. I'm not quite sure. I don't know. So we just have Mina who's starting to just be like, yeah, like you are a piece of aren't you? And then like Taylor just kind of walks off because both of them are starting to get hot with one another. And so like Taylor just leaves. So immediately we have like these two characters that are kind of not on the best foot of feet of things. So we go on with these four characters that are just going to enjoy their time here. Josh is to have a dog named Reggie that it seems like he's trying to hide it for the early stages. So then afterwards, when Taylor's to leave, Josh is to kind of come in here with his dog, Reggie, and because there's like a no dogs policy, but like even with that, like later on, eventually Taylor can get confronted about the Reggie thing, about the dog thing, and Taylor is like, "Hey, I don't have a problem with dogs. Like, I don't really care." So, like, if anything, Taylor is saying it's like, well, like it was a problem with his brother. Like, he doesn't really give a like. Taylor doesn't really care because he has two dogs himself. So Josh goes on and brings Reggie in here, and so they're kind of playing around with the dog for a while. So we go further into this story, and so we have it where it seems that all four of them are thinking like, well, hey, like what should we do for tonight? It just like it immediately feels like there isn't like any plan for them to like do anything. They're just like, we don't know. Um, like you immediately thought like these guys probably would have gone on and had a number of plans for this weekend to just be like, hey, let's go and let's try surfing or let's go and like swim in this beach and whatever. But it's possibly too like it's obviously too cold out to probably go out because obviously they're going on and just kind of like walking onto the beach and like they're having like kind of almost winter almost clothes on, and so it's like okay, so definitely probably not gonna go and swim. So while they're at this beach kind of enjoying the sand and whatever, we have kind of Charlie and Mina who are like kind of far walking further than both Josh and Michelle. So Josh and Michelle have this conversation where Josh is asking like Michelle, it's like, well, hey, like, are you completely fine with how much time Charlie spends with Mina? And Michelle is like, well, yeah, like I feel pretty fine with like them spending a lot of time together. It never bothered me, and it shouldn't now. So Josh all of a sudden is kind of like insecure, and he's just like, well, I think that at some point, like I'm going to ruin this relationship and like Mina's gonna break up with me. And Michelle's like, oh no, like come on, like don't think that. Like it seems like you're good for one another. So so we go on and we have these guys enjoy the beach, and so they make their way back to this place. And so now we have it where there's a number of people that are all like deciding what they're going to do for this night. And so they decide for most of them to all try to do drugs. They all decide to do drugs because they have nothing better to do. They could have done that anywhere. Any of this stuff, it seems like they're doing this. Like they could have actually done this anywhere, but like I guess it's just like a whole change of scenery and like, but like still, it's like. Anyways, we have Michelle who opts out to take drugs because she's like, well, like we got to hike tomorrow, and like I really want to be like very up for that. And like Michelle like had a really hard work day the day before, so she's like, yeah, I'm just like I'm exhausted. So Michelle opts out, and she says like, well, like I'm gonna go on and get like really like I'll get drugged up tomorrow. Drugged up, it's a very weird word. So the rest of the group decides to all go and consume these things called drugs. They either call it like mollies or they call it ecstasy. Either way, I'm not good on the drug lingo because heaven forbid I even know what any of this really means. Unless I watch Euphoria. Just, yeah, Euphoria is just drugs, 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 I tell you. And other things that are just weird and shouldn't exist. Anyways, so check out the Euphoria reviews. You'll know how just much I'm just like that show. But anyways, moving on. So we have the four of these people. So Josh and Charlie are to go on and like start hitting one another and smacking one another. Uh, just because like they're on drugs and they're just like they have to go on and just like be like manly, and because they were dancing earlier so now we have to go on. Now these characters start like smacking one another and tackling one another. um and Josh is like, yeah, I won. Like, and so we go on and we have Michelle who's kind of in this room, and like you can hear the music and you can hear like people shouting, and like so Mina's like, hey, like calm down. So but yeah, everybody's kind of going through their thing and going through their stuff. So Josh decides to go on, and he is like he's out, like he's exhausted. He's going on to get some sleep, and so now we have Charlie and Mina here, and so Charlie and Mina decided it's like, well, hey man, like this hot tub out there, this seems pretty great. Let's go on and like let's get in this hot tub and like and just kind of enjoy this. So as well as I think them going on and going through this telescope and noticing that there might be some neighbors that are kind of spying on them, they're just kind of having fun with it. So Charlie and Mina go into this hot tub, and so all of a sudden, like Charlie's mentioning to Mina, it's like, well, hey, like you make me a better worker, and like I really appreciate like you working with me because it really helps. Like it really is to make me like really good at my job. And Mina's like, well, like what? Likewise. So both of them are in this hot tub, and Charlie's like, yeah, I really appreciate that I have these jets kind of blowing out my spine. And Mina's like, wait a minute, like you're getting jets? And Charlie's like, yeah, I'm getting some jets. So she's like, well, I want some jets. So they switch places, and so Mina's like, yeah, I'm loving these jets. So we go on and we get to where now, like, I guess there's only one side of jets upon this jacuzzi, oddly enough. So we have it to where finally, like, Mina's like, well, how about we both share the jets together? And so, like, they go into this corner, and so both of them are in this corner. And so we have it to where these two are so close to one another that all of a sudden they accidentally kiss. And kissing starts to turn into more kissing. And so all of a sudden, both these two are kind of realizing that this is a mistake. And so Mina is to get out of this hot tub and to realize that she should go on and get some sleep because this is like one long night. So Mina goes on into her room and is to go on and take a shower. And it seems that Charlie is to join her in this shower because it seems that that thing that was going on was to really just be a thing that they decided to continue. So we go on in the next day, and so Michelle's getting ready for this hike, and Charlie, of course, is saying it's like, man, I'm just so dead. Like I'm just so tired. I'm so exhausted. Like I don't think I can go and do this hike. And Mina is kind of the same way. She's kind of like, no, like I'm just so drawn, or I'm just so like exhausted from the night before. And so it seems that Josh is just kind of uh, like up enough to where he is like, okay, like let's go on and just have me and Michelle do this hike. So both Michelle and Josh leave to go on and do this hike. And so Charlie and Mina are talking. And so Mina is mentioning that like they're never going to do that again, that that was like a mistake. And really Charlie is saying like same here. Like I feel the same thing. So Michelle and Josh are hiking, and so Josh goes into this story talking, of course, about past relationships that Charlie has had, saying that it seems that Charlie has had a pattern of while he's with some other woman, he goes on and sees some other girl while seeing the woman that he's already with. and that it seems that Charlie eventually breaks it off, and his story have like a woman in the in the stable, so to speak. So Michelle, like realizing that Charlie is to have this pattern of kind of cheating on the women that he's with, we have Michelle that now is to go on and feel kind of betrayed by Charlie, because I think Charlie was to go on and not tell her the absolute truth about certain things. So Michelle makes it back and she goes back into her room, and Charlie kind of goes and is to meet up with Michelle, and Charlie's like, well, hey, like, what's going on? Michelle goes on, and she, of course, is to say here that, like, hey, like, it seems like Josh was to tell me this story, that it seems like it's not the same story that you told me with your relationship of so and so girl before. And Charlie's like, well, that's probably because I just didn't remember that story. Like, I'm sorry. Like, if it seems like I lied about it, but maybe I just didn't know the story correctly. Michelle's like, well, it seems like you've just had a pattern with being with, like, kind of running through other women. And so that all of a sudden leads, of course, Michelle to go on and kind of feel like she wants to kind of leave. So, but of course, she wants like kind of one more night, of course, where she's gonna go and have a Molly and get drugged up, and everybody else is to kind of just be like, well, no, like I don't think I want another night of this. So Michelle goes on and she gets drugged up, and I think Charlie is supposed to be making the cooking. Um, so they go on and they, of course, make meals, and so we also have a moment where it seems that the dog Reggie is to go missing, because I think Josh was to go on and leave Reggie like by this door, and so Mina was supposed to take care of him, and she never did. She completely forgot about it because she was so tired. Come to have Reggie going missing, and so everybody's starting to look for him until nightfall, and they're like, well, yeah, we can't find him anywhere. So we go on and like we kind of have Josh who's possibly thinking that Taylor was to take this dog because Taylor was to be the guy that doesn't like dogs, and so like they had to hide the dog, and so maybe Taylor's suspicion of possibly taking this dog is kind of very unusual. But Josh is like, well, maybe it's this guy, and there's something unsavory about him. So Michelle is to want to get into the hot tub, and it seems like the hot tub isn't working. So Michelle is to go on and call Taylor and is to want to have him fix the hot tub because he's probably a mechanic, he knows what he's doing. We also had Charlie and Mina while the group was gone. Mina was to go on and take this shower, and she realizes that there's a camera lens in her like her shower head. And so Mina is to have Charlie go on and see if this looks like a camera or not, and Charlie's like, yeah, it definitely is. So now Mina is asking Charlie, it's like, well, what should we do? And Charlie's going on, it's like, well, maybe we should go on and just kind of leave early or get out of here, because what if this guy is to kind of blackmail us with this footage and of us having this affair, and so like this does just not look good. So the only reason why they're trying to wanting to avoid all this like this whole thing is simply because these two characters had an affair. So they're like immediately thinking like, hey, let's just kind of figure out a way to try to get out of here, or figure out a way to possibly try and um, like have a reason to leave. So Taylor is to make his way to this place, and so Taylor is going on fixing this jacuzzi, and so it seems that Taylor is to be confronted by Josh about the whole dog thing, and Taylor's like, no, like, I don't know who took your dog, but it was me because I don't really care. So we then go on and have it where Taylor is to meet up with Mina like somewhere outside later on. So Taylor is like, well, yeah, like like it's kind of sad that your dog ran off. Like if anything, I have two dogs, and like if any with my brother, like he really cared about the whole no dogs thing. I don't really care because I have two dogs myself. So Mina, considering like Taylor was there, Mina dragged Taylor into this room with this bathroom, and let me pause here for a second. All right. So we go on into this film, and so Mina is to grab Taylor and have him come into the bathroom. Taylor is immediately assuming that there's probably something wrong with the toilet because normally that what is to usually happen. And Mina's like, no, like look at this shower head. And Taylor is like, what are you talking about? And she's like, there's a camera in the shower head. He's like, oh, come on. So all of a sudden we go on and we have Mina and Taylor that get in such like a fighting match between them, and to where Josh kind of comes in, starts grabbing Taylor and starts beating him to where he falls into the shower, and it seems that everybody's kind of scrambling to go in the bathroom to see what's going on. Charlie, of course, pulls Josh off of Taylor, and they go and check his pulse, and Taylor is technically still alive. So they're going on and they're thinking like, well, hey, like, what should we go on and do here after they find out like what happened in this bathroom? And like Michelle is like, well, I want to call the cops, and Charlie is just saying like, well, hey, like maybe we shouldn't call the cops. So everything is the prevention of Charlie having Michelle possibly figure out that he was having an affair. So every bit of this is just like them trying to hide this whole thing. So really we have it where like I think Charlie and Mina, like their goose is just either way fried. So someone's going to find out, and eventually they do. So Michelle is to go on and kind of contemplate like calling the police, or doing something, maybe even leaving. And all of a sudden on the TV, she ends up seeing footage of both Charlie and Mina in the shower together. And so she decides to leave after we go on to have the group find out that Taylor is now dead. And they're contemplating just dumping the body off to the side of this kind of beach, hoping that no one is ever going to possibly find him. And Charlie's telling Michelle, it's like, well, hey, like we can just say that you weren't even ever here, or that like we can come up with a story. And Michelle is just like, no. So Michelle goes on, and she, of course, because what actually happens is Taylor was actually alive, but the man, who, of course, is going to start killing people in this movie at some point, is to, of course, go on and snuff out Taylor. So we have Michelle watching this footage. She goes into her car, and like she is now just distraught, and is now just kind of fed up with Charlie at this point. To where Michelle decides to drive off, and this is the only car that they have here. So, well, technically, besides Taylor's car. So, Michelle drives off and she ends up with an accident because of her car, or her tires go flat. And as she's walking, she realizes that there was a thing to purposely pop her tires. So Michelle, of course, is leaving this text mentioning that she's freaking out because of what had happened to her car, and that like her car is to kind of be in an accident. So Charlie, of course, is going on after her, and so we have Charlie telling both Mina and Josh what he's doing, or what's going on. So Charlie then goes off to the woods after Michelle, and we find out that Michelle, I guess, had had her window broken into. So we didn't really actually see what happened, but we have to have an assumption of what happened. Because, of course, Charlie is to kind of like, okay, if Michelle isn't in her car, then I'm going to go on and start ringing her cell to see if I can hear her. Charlie all of a sudden does start to hear this ringtone, and that leads to a dead body of Charlie, who of course has had a hammer through her head, and which also leads to this man coming out of nowhere with this kind of rubber mask, going on and stabbing Charlie in the head with this hammer also. So now we have both just Mina and Josh left, and so it seems that Josh was to go on when he was looking for Reggie, and he discovers that there is to be this combination door that is to have like this kind of weird thing about it. So Josh and Mina are trying to break down this door to get inside, and so once they do, they figured that they would find this kind of lavish room with all these like surveillance items, and like I was immediately thinking that too, but instead we're just finding a like an underground place with a bunch of junk inside of it, which really just made it feel like a waste to have even had this room, because it kind of just uncovered nothing. So we then go on and have these two characters just kind of like going back into the place, just kind of figuring things out. So we all of a sudden have Josh who's starting to get these texts that are going on and having certain audios being done where both Charlie and Mina are talking about we can never do this again, and them both agreeing, and Josh is going on and telling Mina, it's like, well, what are they saying here? Like, what do you like? What does this mean? So Mina is just trying to, and this just continues to lead to Josh consistently seeing all of this, like these clips and all these things, and so Josh all of a sudden gets the video of both Charlie and both Mina in the shower. So we go on here, and really what happens is we have the man that kind of appears and is starting to take down people, and we have a part where when this killer is to go on and really ram into Josh's head with his hammer, I'm like, oh my god, a little gruesome, but like we need some kind of gruesome in this movie. And so the man then at some point is to go on and go after Mina, and Mina ends up falling down these stairs, which I'm like, freaking like. The best part of the horror movie is usually when a person has fall down a flight of stairs, because that is the most like painful thing to do when you have to go through a movie. Is like, oh yeah, I'm gonna just go ahead and just fall down these stairs. I'm sure it probably hurt, because freaking all of those things do. Unless you like have a character that has all kinds of like padding and stuff like that, I would go on and see like moments where you'd have like like if a person falls down the stairs, you have this like spinal thing that they kind of have padding for these characters, or like elbow pads and knee pads, whatever, because like you can go on and like smack and hit and whatever, a number of things. So we have Mina fall down these flight of stairs, and so of course this killer eventually goes on and is to also kill Mina, and so we then have this man that goes on and is to really just go and clean up. And his version of clean up is to kind of chuck this hammer into Taylor's toolbox, and is to go through this rental place and is taking every single surveillance thing and pulling it out of this place, and then kind of wiping it down clean. And so I guess what this man does is he starts going and finding a number of places that are being rented out by either himself or someone else, and he decides to go through and surveillance the place. Maybe he rents it out for a weekend or something like that, and then plants all this stuff. If he's not going to rent it himself, and so this guy just continues to go and find this stuff, to where I guess he can use for his own private stash, or maybe he sells it online somewhere. Um, but yeah, so this guy is to be like this very shady guy that is to really just go on and rent out this other new place. We never really see this guy's face. And so he just kind of goes on and he like reinstalls these certain like shower heads and gets all this surveillance footage, and is just kind of watching people go throughout their days and putting uh, like certain masks on for their late nights where they're going and trying to uh, like perfect their skins or whatever. Oh, and so we just kind of see a number of people just go throughout doing their thing, and so we have the man at some point who is to go on and toss back on this rubber mask and just kind of waiting for his next time to strike. So yeah, that's kind of how this movie just kind of plays out. 37 minutes. That's kind of surprising. I thought it would be a little bit less than that. Because this movie, like, I thought would be really quick to explain. So, if there's anything that I did forget about, let me know in the comments below, because I'm sure there probably was. But with how brief this movie is, um, probably not. There's also the one moment where Reggie does come back to the place after everyone is dead. And so, like, the man is kind of like touching the dog, and the dog kind of is like, and so he like backs away. So, so yeah, so Reggie does come back. Like, Reggie didn't die, so that's great for a dog. But anyways, I think that's all that I have to say about the rental. If there's anything that I forgot about, let me know. If you watched this movie and you enjoyed it, or you didn't enjoy it, you thought it sucked, like, I could completely agree either way. But all I want to say is I'm going to get out of here. Bye, buddy. Bye, buddy.